And
Okay, so we're going to continue with our Pachad Yitzchok from Rav Yitzchok Hutner on the first Ma'amar on Shabbat. We're going to start Perek Bet in the Ma'amar, and we're going to dedicate this learning session Li'iloi Nishmat Anna Yulia Bat Yitzla, or Anna Julia Bat Shetel, and Sarah Bat Menachem Mendel Isar, and on the occasion of the Yurtzeit of Shmuel Eliezer ben Yaakov HaKohen, the Nishamot should have aliyot, and our learning should be a zchut for Am Yisrael to protect them and keep them safe, and protect the soldiers and give them hatzlacha, rabban, siyata dishmai, and their mission, and to protect the hostages, and that they should be safe and come home safely, and we should see nisim and iflaot, geulot and yeshuot.
Amen.
Okay, so Perek Bet, okay, paragraph Zayin. Umamshichim anu et hakav hala. And we will continue this line of reasoning further. Mitoch ma shenitbar lanu b'perek rishon, through what we have explained in the first chapter, Shel Ma'amar Zeh, of this article, Nilmad ki legabe shvisas Shabbos yotze hu ha'ma'amar shel na'asa adam miklalon shel shar ha'ma'amarot. Here you go, gentlemen. We go from a discussion of the creation of man to the discussion of the creation of man, and we want to make a point here that hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate how the utterance of "let us make man" is in a distinct quality of all the other utterances. That there's something very, very important dimensionally about this utterance that shifts everything else.
Well, it's "let us" as opposed to the singular.
That is definitely something that sticks out over here. So let's talk about why, on the appearance of the utterance, when God said on the sixth day, "Let us make man," it became something, a utterance that removed itself from the regular category of the rest of the utterances. Na'aseh Adam, let us make man. Hu ha'ma'amar shel yitzirat koach hadat. Essentially, this is a statement of the creation of a new element in Bria, which is the power of Da'at. We're going to call that knowledge. We see that it's really everything that humanity brings to the table. It's carnal knowledge, it's connection, and yet it's something in the mind. It is some sort of awareness in the mind that shifts the perspective it's the orientation of the being that's coming to connect. It's his connection to reality vis-a-vis his orientation and perspective from his mind. Okay? So let's talk about dat. V'harei nitbayer lanu, it is explained to us, ki mahut shvitata shel Shabbos, the essence of rest in regards to Shabbos, he hanamechet erko shel guf ha'olamot, it is the lowering of the worth or value of the body of the worlds, ad kedei hitpatlut, till they become null and void, lu'uram shel ha'olamot, to in contrast to the light of the worlds. So there's essentially in creation, the creation of something has within it the external creation, and it's essential, the element of it that's hidden, that's inside, that's of its spiritual vitality. So you have the light of the thing and the body of the thing.
And it's
light
following
of the
through the Iker and the
Tafel. Exactly, right. Now we're building on that idea that we mentioned before, that there is something primary and secondary. On top of that, we're being parallel, we're being malbish, another idea. We're going to take it further.
So basically he's saying that let us make man, let's make the physical man, but ultimately the purpose is to nullify that physicality, to subservient to the spiritual.
I don't think that's what we're saying. Hold on, before we jump the gun and define this, let's just say the words again. Okay, so the dot, the introduction of dot, it's what changes, it's what nullifies the body of the worlds in contrast to the light of the worlds. What we're going to say, I believe what we have been saying, is that the appearance of worlds that are being created in the 6 days, that seems like an introduction of worlds, and yet when their essence is being revealed on Shabbos, it turns that which was being revealed during the week was not their essence, but really just their bodies. And that realization is only possible with the introduction of
With
dat.
that, and that's man.
Yes, meaning we introduced the level of creation itself was introduced, and then we introduce dat, and then that dat understands now that creation that was really only the body with the introduction on Shabbos of the light of the world.
Right.
Okay, I think that's the formula.
Mm-hmm.
Umikivan, and since shehanamachazu, this lowering of the status or the perception of the creation of the 6 days to being just the body of creation, right? This lowering, na'asit, it occurs, he rak bekocha shel hadat, only through the faculty of dat. Halo, is it not? Mimela, through that, yotze mizeh, it comes out, she'i efshar, it is impossible lomar, to say, shekoch hadat nase letafa, that the power of dat becomes secondary. Me'achar sheklaliyut hashvita mitkayemet bekocho shel hadat. After we understand that the generality of resting is only possible with the power of dat, harei barur, it is clear, hu shelo titachen shvita bekoch hadat atzma, it's not possible for rest to occur with dat by itself. What is happening here? We're in the middle of an idea, but I'm just saying that, remember, the idea is like this. God is making utterances, and creation is happening, and there's a certain creation during the 6 days that is only on a certain level, but we don't know that it is only on a certain level. We see creation. Creation is presenting itself through these acts, and yet then there's an introduction of dat, and the dat itself does not automatically turn those things, meaning it's not that dat now understands that those things are only the body, it's the dat now allows that with the appearance of Shabbat, it can contrast, and it's really the appearance of Shabbat is what nullifies. Meaning it's the essence contra to the secondary that creates the secondary, but that will not happen without the introduction of the element of dat in the middle to allow for that.
It's a chicken and egg, because if you don't have the dat, you don't have the Shabbat either.
Nothing happened.
Because
right.
there's no one to observe it.
Right, but that contrast between the main thing and the secondary thing is not a function of dat. It's because it's the strength of the secondary thing. I mean, the strength of the primary thing over the secondary thing. Just none of that is relevant without dat. None of that's real without dat.
None of it is discernible.
Right, which means that it's not real.
It's similar to the noise of the tree falling down.
What you're saying is that it's the idea of physics.
Yeah.
Yeah, meaning that that reality is only reality because it's
observed.
It's built into perspective. Mm-hmm. So even it's so funny, we take for granted when we discuss reality, the notion we kind of imagine, like in a thought experiment, we want to talk about a pristine empirical situation. We talk about phenomena that has nothing to do with the observer, and yet it's impossible to separate because the observer is what creates the reality. Right. So meaning, would there be a contrast of the light of creation and the body of creation without the significance of dat to be able to make that? Meaning the value is a function of dat.
Correct.
And yet at the same time, it's not enough. What makes Shabbos Shvita is not that there's dat, it's that there's something introduced on Shabbos that is of a different quality. Because the dat can recognize it and makes it real.
Right.
That's what we're going to go with so far, okay? So there's two elements here. There's a built-in contrast between the reality as it presents itself during the week versus how that changes in hindsight, so to speak, with the appearance of Shabbos. But the hindsight, that sight at all, is from the observer's perspective.
But it's interesting that the dat has to be in existence before the creation of Shabbat.
Yeah, I'll tell you why.
Because you can't have the contrast otherwise. There's no contrast otherwise.
But the contrast, it's like this. If a person did not have dat, going back to our case where a person has the food in the vessel, it's his dat that determines which had importance.
Yeah.
So, meaning it's not that the vessel is inherently, vessel is a physical object, the food has a physical object. Its importance is what it is vis-a-vis him. Yeah. So his dat determines what is essential, what's primary, which determines whether it's going to be a hotzah or not.
Right.
It's a crucial element that determines, meaning it's not exactly, it's the dat is the element that then takes into account the contrast. The contrast does the math. but it's the dot that focused on which should be what his intent was.
Right.
Okay, so you have these.
It's not just the contrast; it's the intent that the dad.
It's the meaning to
the meaning.
It's the meaning as afforded to the observer,
right.
The dot at play. Right. Okay. Okay. It is within the purview of the faculty of dat, of knowledge, to discern, to recognize between the body, both, right? It recognizes both what is the body of the world and its light, v'lekvoet arkam, and to designate their value, their worth, hahadadi, their both of their worth to each other, kimot tafa legabi ikar, like a secondary to an essential. Meaning, it determines interrelationships. Meaning, the dot is what determines the significance of the interrelationships of those elements. Umitoch kach, and through this, lahasik, to grasp, et hitbatlut pu'ulatam, the nullification of their doings, shalasarat ha'ma'arot, of these 10 utterances, klape oran shalasarat ha'dibrot, how they nullify in the face of the light of these 10 utterances. Okay, so I don't want to before we get lost, I think it's important to go back and try to root our understanding of what the difference between the body, what we keep on saying, the body of the world and the light of the world, right? Right. Okay, now God did not restate whatever he stated during the course of the week. He didn't state again on Shabbos. I mean, it was one creation for each of these elements, and yet only during the week an aspect of them was revealed. And somehow, because of Shabbos, there was a deeper aspect in all these things that only now was present. I mean, the utterances themselves were kind of like a creation of an element of Bria that it was like a two-tiered. It presented itself as creation, but the true reason for it and how it was, meaning the purpose of what creation was for, was not revealed yet. Once it's revealed, the deeper aspects of those things are actually understood, right? So the element of Shabbos puts into context what those utterances are in a way that reveals a deeper dimension to creation, and therefore all of a sudden we don't even, those original utterances that we're aware of, that's not even what's all of a sudden what makes up creation. We realize it's the deep dimension before, which was inherently in them, which only is revealed on Shabbos, right? Okay. So, okay. We said, what is the rest of Shabbos? It is the resting, the cessation, it's not the cessation of something that was active and is no longer active. There's a shift or a change that happens in perspective on Shabbos, which is a shvita, it's a rest, because it's the nullification of the understanding of Sheshit Yemei Bereshit one way. Now it no longer has that value. That value takes the back seat to something else, and therefore it is the nullification and the resting of the forces which were originally active. Right? We follow? Meaning it's not that what God was doing during the 6 days he no longer does now on Shabbos. It's that the significance that we afforded them during the 6 days is null on Shabbos. It takes away
taking the mashal of the plate with the food. The plate is the plate, but it's the dad that demotes it to, or gives it additional meaning as a carrier, as a carrier of the food.
Right, the value, right. Yeah. Isn't it amazing how he puts together a language to be able to discuss these such abstract ideas? We're clawing and trying to grasp it, through structures of, and it's still kind of ethereal. We're still trying to train ourselves the language of, Okay. And since the nullification of this aspect, right, he shvitat shel Shabbat, that is the resting that occurs on Shabbos. Harei nimtza, it turns out, ki dafka b'sha shema marei bereshit shoftim. It's specifically at the moment that the utterances of creation are resting. Dafka then az mitader koach hadat b'chol haniskaviyut shebo. That's when the faculty of dat shines forth and is manifest in all its loftiness. Meaning, with the cessation, the quieting of the value, the rash, so to speak, of that level of creation of the 6 days, all of a sudden, the significance the quality of the aspect of dat in the world shines forth. That's where we see what dat is. Shvitat Shabbos notzeret bekoch hadas. The resting of Shabbos is a function, right? It is created. It comes out from the power of dat. Umemela yotze mizeh ki dafka b'shasha kol shoves hadas yotzeres. And therefore, right, one of it turns out because of this that it's specifically at the moment when everything rests that dat is manifest.
You can give another mashal in terms of art, impressionist art. If you zoom into an impressionist art, you see beautiful colors, but you don't understand the meaning of it. And then when you zoom out, you understand that that's a form of a person or something, and then it gives it meaning to those colors. Could you say the same?
Okay, you want to say that if my perspective, right, with impressionist or a pointillist paint, something that has abstract brushwork, the marks are, if I zoom in, it's very abstract. I don't see the form of the thing, and therefore I can't really appreciate the interrelationships of the marks. But when I zoom out,
or its purpose.
Right. When I zoom out, I see the interrelationships and how they come together to create a larger form.
Yeah.
So, okay. I'm not, okay. You're saying once I can assign how they come together, I can appreciate a greater aspect.
Yeah, and that's relationship, and that's dat. Dat is all about relationships.
See, I see in your mashal more the idea of dat as, it's totally true. I totally see what you're saying. I understand that to be kind of like the distinction between chaos, making form and order out of whatever seemingly disparate elements are presented to you, and then being able to see how they all come together to make oneness. That's more of like a bifurcation, a scattering of existence, meaning the chaos versus oneness. And you're saying that's exactly, it's a function of that. I have not successfully in the past couple seconds figured out how to apply that to how I was thinking about this. So I don't know, but it's definitely true. I understand what you're saying.
It's also beautiful because the whole process of creation is going from singular to duality. And then the dat allows us to bring the duality back into singularity.
So you're saying Shabbos is somehow a oneness that wraps the whole package together.
Exactly.
And if I've been experiencing the unfolding of a linear creation, it seems like independent aspects, things. I don't see how all the machine comes together. And then Shabbos is when everything clicks and I see, we created a world.
Exactly. And it was created by one God.
Let me ask you, the way you're looking at it now, would it make a difference if the first thing God made was man, and then let the dat observe the entire process, and something else would happen between Yom Shishi and Shabbos? Or did it fundamentally have to miss out on the observation of all those things and just be aware at the last moment to observe them as they are, and then the switch?
Yeah, I think it's important the second, because our five senses would not be able to sustain or integrate or understand.
I mean, we are a product of all that also.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to understand the first 5 days, in other words. We can only consume or internalize the creation when it's finished.
To me, you're bringing out a beautiful point that I feel is super. It's once again, it's another reiteration of everything we're saying, but it really brings it to focus that because everything that went on in creation ultimately is incorporated within man. He's a product of it, like you're saying. Like he wouldn't have this, he couldn't exist before. He'd have to be made independently, a whole creation, and then observe God, right? Because all that stuff ultimately amounts to man at the end, right? So what it turns out, if that's true, that not only are you observing in creation the difference between during the week on Shabbos, but you're observing it in yourself, because he appears as a culmination of all those 6 days, right? That go into him also as a microcosm. He experiences it, and then he sees what Shabbat does to those. He's also experiencing inside. There's going to be a shift with the introduction of a neshama yetera that's going to have. He's going to realize all those elements of him is going to come to click, and he's going to know who he is. He's experiencing it internally too.
That's supposed what the Alshech said, that Hashem created man as a golem in the first 6 days, and only on the 6th day gave the da'at.
But it seems like he existed as man before Shabbos, where there was an introduction of neshama yetera. Meaning, if he would have not sinned, then that's what would have happened in him too, and he would have been in a state of Shabbos. Right. And somehow, maybe because he sinned, he never got there. So God, as a benefit, didn't want to ruin the whole creation, let him stay there for Shabbos. But unfortunately, he did that to himself. So I mean, Shabbos happened in the Bria, but Shabbos didn't happen in him.
Right.
Wow, I never thought of this before. Like, this is so cool. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're opening up things.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just finish this, try to finish this paragraph. Okay. Ma'amar nase Adam, the utterance, the divine utterance of let us make man, hu ma'amar habriya shel koach hadat, that is the statement in creation of the power of dat, of knowledge. Ve'al kain, and therefore hinenu omrim ki dafka shvitata shel Shabbos is specifically the resting on Shabbos hamivatelet, which nullifies et ikriyut, the initial essence, the essentialness of olam hateva, of the natural world, shenotzar ba'amarot bereshit, which was created from the utterances of creation. That itself, right, that shvita, that resting, is what reveals and brings out the light of the essentialness of the power of dat, which comes out of the utterance of Nasa Adam. So what did we just say over here? It's that it's the resting, just like we said, it's the knowledge that understands the contrast that makes what happens during the 6 days rest. It's also the resting of the 6 days that really creates the stage for dat to really shine and do its thing. And it gives a stage for dat in the world. Okay? So, I mean, they have this mutual symbiotic kind of relationship. Okay? And this is what we said, regarding the sanctity, the holiness of Shabbos. We see that the sanctity of Shabbos is what makes when God said Nasa Adam, it automatically makes this stage of creation, this utterance, different, in a totally different class than the rest of them, because that's what directly makes the revelation of Shabbos possible. And be'osha b'sheshis yemei ha'maisa Paul hu ha'ma'amar nasa adam b'toch ha'pula klali shel sar ma'amarat kulam. And even though, yet, within the 6 days, you also have nasa adam. Meaning nasa adam is a function of the 6 days. It exists in the world of the 6 days. It's a product of the 6 days. 6 days is when God is saying things and creating, and nasa adam is natively part of that creation. However, hine b'yom ha'Shabbos, when Shabbos appears, mityached hu ha'ma'amar nasa adam, it distinguishes nasa adam from its domain that it shares with the rest of them, and elevates it to a status that mitoch shehu polet pulato b'shvitat pulatam shel sham ha'marot, because it is that utterance within those utterances that what quiets and nullifies those utterances with the appearance of Shabbos. It's a bridge. It's what they call a memutze. It's an interface. So, like, you know, we talk about how in different orders of species, whether it's spiritual or physical, there's always a transitional order. So, you know, for example, you have this even in, maybe it's like a philosophical way of thinking, not the philosophy of science, but maybe an ancient philosophy. But in science, you have, let's say, mineral, vegetable, animal, human. So in Kabbalah and early thought, even other religious thought, you'll have something in between. So we actually Chazal recognize creations that blur the lines in between. So between mineral and animal, you'll have coral, or you'll have a sponge. You know, between vegetable and animal, you'll have a sponge or mushrooms, or you'll mycelium, or you'll have even a Venus flytrap. Meaning there's a continuum. Even though we distinguish between orders, there's this like a range, right? And between an animal and a human, you have specimens that very confusing to us, right? They look, we're not sure what they are, right? So perhaps at the in a transition between dimensions, there's a discrete zone that we could demarcate by itself, but also serves as a seamless transition. So Naase Adam is the last utterance, right, of creation. Meaning it's the first. It's the first utterance of the last creation of Sheshit Mei Bereshit, which is man. It's the introduction of man, and it's the dot of the right. And this idea of dot now is not just natively a part of the utterances. It's in the world of the utterances. It's on the level of the dimension of the 6 days. But it's what facilitates that quantum leap to appreciate the Or of Shabbos. So it's in between. Its domain is both one of the utterances, and yet it's totally separate, because it's what allows Shabbos, which is a level of reality and awareness above the level of the utterances. Okay?
Right.
So it has this kind of like special status. Even though that the utterance of Na'aseh Adam acts within the world of the 6 days, within the general world of all those other of the 10 utterances, when Shabbos appears, this utterance of Na'aseh Adam becomes unique and special. Mitoch shehu poel et pu'ulato, because it enacts its work, its action, b'shvitat pu'ulatam shel shamarot, by actually quieting the work of the other utterances. And he just ends off here in Yiddish. Shabbos der hört sich der koyach hadas in sein ganze Yichidus. Und memela benimmt sich der Maimer Na'aseh Adam und sein Besonderkeit von allem Amar. And that's just a Yiddish restatement of, here I'll translate for you. And Shabbos, it points out itself the power of Dat in its, how the Dat has an entirely of its own unique specialness. And Mimela, through that, the Na'aseh Adam's utterance takes for itself a special uniqueness from all the other Ma'amar. Okay, we'll pause here. Shavua Tov.
Thank you.